As you hear from each, oh, thank you, Melissa, for turning on our recording. As you hear from each presenter, I encourage you to think about how your life has been touched in a small way or a bigger way by conservation. And if hearing these stories makes you think a little bit differently about what conservation is. At the end, we're going to have a door prize for 3 lucky people in the form of this. I hope you can all see my lovely hat. So be sure to stick around till the end for that door prize. So with that quick introduction, I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Bergen. And while Bergen shares his screen, I'm going to stop my screen share here. Bergen Tjossem is with Eagle Valley Land Trust, and you will hear about a project that's a bit unusual and unique in the land trust world. And you'll see why with Bergen's presentation. He's going to present Saving Sweetwater Lake, Colorado's newest state park. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Bergen.
Thank you, Linda. I'm having a little trouble sharing my screen now. Of course.
Okay, just a moment.
Give me one.
Okay. You're on mute, Bergen.
I have a little technical difficulty due to updating things. It's not letting me share. Would you like to give it my full storytelling?
Let me.
Otherwise, I can email it to you and you could share it.
Yes, we could do that. And maybe in the meantime, we can start with the second presenter, and that's fine. Here, let me go to, if it's okay, Joelle, if you're prepared to bring up your presentation, we can do Bergen second. Does that work for you, Joelle?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Great. So scratch the Sweetwater Lake one for the moment. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Joelle is she's with Rio Grande Headwaters Land Trust, and she's going to present It's for the Birds and More, Protecting Our Wetlands.
Great, thanks, Linda. Can you guys all hear me okay?
Yep.
I hope so. Hi, my name is Joelle Marier. I am Associate Director for the Rio Grande Headwaters Land Trust. We are located in Colorado's San Luis Valley and serve a 5-county region of South Central Colorado. And my presentation, as Linda mentioned, is It's for the Birds and More, Protecting Our Wetlands. So the main work we do is...
Sorry, Joelle, I'm sorry, we're not seeing your presentation.
Oh, sorry. What are you seeing?
We're seeing you.
Oh.
I wonder why, if there's
Oh, hold on.
Okay. There we go. It's coming. Here we go. Great.
How's it going? Looking good now?
Yeah, you might want to switch your display settings to presentate. There you go. That's right.
All right. So the main work that we do is protecting private lands with conservation easements, and those are private lands like this place. This is the King Ranch. It's located near the Blanca Wetlands Complex, just below Blanca Peak, which you can see there in the background. But we're also expanding our work to include restoration, youth engagement, and groundwater conservation. Water has been at the center of our work since we were founded in 1999. And protecting riparian and wetland habitats has been a particular focus with our location at the headwaters of the Rio Grande. And that's what I'm here to talk with you about today. So why wetland conservation? Some of you might be thinking, aren't these just stinky, muddy, wet places that I don't want to be? And I would say not at all. Wetland habitats are teeming with life, and they supply a host of both ecological and community benefits. And that's what I'm here to tell you about. So one of the first benefits that comes to mind, I think, for all of us is wildlife. Wetlands provide habitat for hundreds and probably, nationwide thousands of species of birds and other wildlife, while supporting ecosystem productivity and biodiversity. 80% of the migratory bird habitat in the West is found on private flood irrigated meadows. And that's the type of land that a lot of land trusts in Colorado are working to protect. Maybe some of you have been down to our area to see the annual sandhill crane migration. If you haven't, it's a time when hundreds of thousands of cranes and other birds stop over in the San Luis Valley on their way to their northern breeding grounds. And that would not be possible without our wetland resources. And then here in the San Luis Valley, those same areas are also essential for some of our endangered species, like the southwestern willow flycatcher and the yellow-billed cuckoo. And, in a nutshell, I think all of our wildlife and the people in our communities are relying on these resources, whether directly or indirectly, to both survive and to thrive. So another maybe obvious benefit that our wetland resources provide is water. Wetlands are a really important way to support our water supply. And you might be thinking, well, isn't that water just sitting there evaporating? And it is, but it's also at the same time sinking down into the ground. And when that happens, we're recharging our aquifers, and as that natural filtration system happens, improving our water quality. And then with more groundwater and more surface water, we're also enhancing stream flows for our migratory birds, these ducks, rafting, fishing, and agriculture, among other things. So in the process of conserving water, we also end up conserving a lot of land. And I pulled these stats just based on, the results of the wetland work we've been doing. These numbers would be higher if I included all of the conservation in the San Luis Valley. So just with wetland conservation funding alone, Wright and our partners have benefited over 40,000 acres of land in the San Luis Valley. 20,000 of those acres are protected with conservation easements, and another 20,000 are wetlands that have been restored or enhanced. And as I mentioned, this is just a small piece of the work that we all do. And then finally, another benefit of wetland conservation is conserving our way of life. Aside from being beneficial for our water and wildlife resources, wetland conservation supports healthy communities, whether that's through preserving open space and supporting our wildlife resources, supporting clean air and clean water, or providing for recreation. Wetlands and our water resources are making Colorado a better place to live. But also, you might be surprised to learn that these areas are having a huge impact on our regional economies. For us, when we're working with some of these big grant funders, which I'll talk about in a second, it's bringing millions of dollars into our communities. And then when you couple that with the tourism industry and then the ways that this water is supporting our pretty robust agricultural economy, it really adds up. Just with our Monte Vista Crane Festival alone, which some of you probably attended, that's bringing over $3 million into the San Luis Valley every year, which is really significant economically, but also ends up being very significant ecologically. And then finally, climate change. So, when we're conserving wetland habitats, we're helping to mitigate climate change impacts. And by doing so, we're enhancing the economic and ecological resiliency in our region and across the West. So to keep these desirable places to live for both humans and wildlife. Why is wetlands conservation important now? Well, since Colorado became a state, we have lost over 50% of Colorado's wetlands. Of the wetlands that remain, 62% of them are found on wet meadows on agricultural lands. And again, this is the land that we and many other land trusts are working to protect. You know, as Colorado has a rapidly growing population, these same agricultural lands are a common target for developers. And then with that growing population, we get rural subdivision, but also more demand for water, which leads to competing water demands that threaten not just wetland water supplies, but our water supplies in general. And then when you add on top of this, the long-term drought, you know, that has significant impacts across the board for water availability, not just here, but across the West. So I thought I would share this map of our area. This is the San Luis Valley. The yellow areas are wet areas on the map, and the map on the left is wet areas in the mid-1980s, and the map on the right is wet areas today. And I think a quick look demonstrates that we have lost a lot of our wetland habitat. And in fact, the study that produced this map estimated at least 50% of our wet areas in the San Luis Valley have been lost since the mid-80s. So, you know, I think that just demonstrates the importance of doing this work, and also of doing this work on private lands, because in looking at the map on the right, 70% of those areas that are still considered wet areas in the valley are on private land. So this is where land trusts come in. What the work we do is conserving private lands, and we do this work with a lot of different grant funding, but one grant funding source I wanted to focus on in particular is the North American Wetlands Conservation Act. This is a major grant source across North America for wetlands work and has brought huge benefits to our area, the San Luis Valley. You might hear me call it NACA. I'll try not to, but this legislation was enacted over 30 years ago to provide federal funding for long-term protection of wetlands and other lands needed by migratory birds in North America. Just in our area alone, in the San Luis Valley, this funding has brought over $11 million into our community for wetlands protection, restoration, and enhancement over the last 15 years. And that, again, is very significant in both economic and ecological ways. So I just wanted to highlight that because that's a major way that we get this work done. And, you know, we're doing this work on a landscape scale, and the only way that's possible is through partnerships. We wouldn't be able to compete for these wetland dollars without having lots of partners contributing to this work, whether it's you know, local restoration organizations, other land trusts, big foundations, or we even work with our local wildlife refuges to get as much wetland work done as possible. And in fact, I think through the years with these NACA grants, we've engaged probably over 24 partners, including landowners, in this work. So another big thing that land trusts do is stewardship. We conserve land and then we commit to taking care of them forever. And we do that through conservation easement monitoring, education, restoration, and enhancement work. And, you know, I think just to wrap it up, we all do this work because it's just essential to save what remains of not just our wetland habitats, but also the other land resources that sustain the wildlife and the communities that rely upon them. And that's all I have for now. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for taking time to join us this afternoon to learn more about private land conservation. And I am happy to answer questions at the end of the session.
Great, thank you so much, Joelle. So I am going to share Bergen's screen on his behalf. And technical difficulties always get the best of us in these circumstances.
It is never ending.
Yes. So hopefully you can see it. Is it looking okay?
Yeah, that looks good.
Great. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. I will give this another shot. No promises, but yeah, we'll try it out here. Hi, everybody. My name is Bergen Tjossem. I am the Deputy Director of the Eagle Valley Land Trust, which over here in Eagle County, which I-70 corridor, a lot of you probably know where it is. When I joined EVLT, that was about in 2018, it actually brought me back home to where I grew up. And so clearly I'm a little bit biased, but I think Eagle County has some of the absolute wonders of Colorado, not least of which is the property that I'm here to talk about today. Which technically is not in Eagle County, it's close. That's kind of besides the point. But pretty soon after I started working here, I saw that Jim Doss is on the call here. Jim had been working on this for a long time. This property, Sweetwater Lake, came up for sale. He and the Conservation Fund had started working on this kind of very, very ambitious project that was it seemed very ambitious for the size of our land trust. It's this property itself, being privately owned for so long, has kind of been a pipe dream for conservationists for a long time. And judging by its kind of long history of being passed down the line for so long, the same goes for developers as well. So I'm here to talk about Sweetwater Lake, which is slated to be Colorado's newest state park. I think you can jump to the next slide. Not a ton of info on these slides, just a lot of pictures from Todd Winslow Pierce, who provided these to us for this campaign. So this property, there has really been a shared nostalgia for a lot of time spent at the lake, on horseback, in this area. It's really known for its really charming character, its Western feel, fishing. You'll hear everybody talk about the homemade pies, hiking, camping, and world-class horseback riding. And I remember as a kid, long hours in the saddle exploring some of these trails with my dad, which I didn't appreciate until more recently. And I imagine a lot of you listening today actually have kind of similar fond, nostalgic memories. This property is also the entry point to the Flat Tops Wilderness Area, which is one of the least visited wilderness areas in the country, overlapping the most visited national forest in the country. So kind of an interesting dynamic there. And on top of all that, it remains a very critical wildlife habitat, especially winter habitat for elk and deer, a lot of other wildlife. And it's also home to a pretty wide variety of raptors. And perhaps most interestingly, it also hosts a pretty big cave that has incredibly rare Ute pictographs. So that's been a big highlight of this project as well. This property's been privately owned for decades. It's been bought and sold by developers whose plans range from kind of small estates to a water bottling plant to a private luxury golf course estate that would close off public access. But over and over again, these plans failed to materialize. And throughout its long history, it's been a gathering place for the mountain Ute, a long history of which we are just beginning to understand, to a Chicago gangster named Diamond Jack's secret hideout, to a long-standing kind of quasi-public community centerpiece. But now the lake is finally in public hands, and it's slated to be the 43rd state park of Colorado. I think you can jump to the next slide then too. So where we are today is a result of a many years long campaign. Like I said before, is a very ambitious project, easily the biggest project that we have been a part of, led by the Conservation Fund, the Forest Service, and the Eagle Valley Land Trust, and made possible by a very long list of partners, including Great Outdoors Colorado, Eagle County, the town of Gypsum, the town of Eagle, Garfield County, and nearly 200 individual donors and community members who were so passionate, wrote letters of support for this project that it could not have been done without all of that. Two partners that that are just very unique are the Sweetwater community, really banded together to raise a ton of money and awareness about this project, to kind of raise it to the one of the top conservation priorities in the country. And then a fun anecdote too is Autumn Rivera, who's Colorado's 2022 Teacher of the Year. Her middle school class started raising money for this campaign so that we can conserve it. That's kind of how that just was such an exciting addition to the campaign. But thanks to all the support the campaign received, the Conservation Fund, which had purchased the property, transferred the property to the White River National Forest last year. So kind of in the fall of last year. And a few months later, Colorado Parks and Wildlife state agency joined this kind of first of its kind partnership to manage the property as a state park. And I think you can kind of jump to the next slide there. So where are we at now? It was very exciting to get the property into public hands, but I think like everybody in the conservation world knows that the work is far from over. We have a lot of work to do, and it's a really exciting project that we're kind of building and creating as we go. It is, as it's slated to be the kind of next state park, the partnership, which is kind of led by Forest Service and Colorado Parks and Wildlife at this point, is working very hard to activate that property. Now there's public property, people are going to start coming. People want to see this place, and we're looking forward to sharing it with our state and our visitors. So we have to get it ready. We got to first of all protect all of these resources, like this Ute Cave, like this eagle that's actually here in this picture here. It's complicated protecting an eagle that lives right in the middle of the property. So that's been a really fun process to kind of figure out how that works between a federal agency and a state agency. So that's kind of currently in the works. And we're also trying to figure out what the long-term plans looks like, while also trying to figure out the short-term plan, but just to make sure that this kind of hidden gem remains a centerpiece of our community, and it can be protected and managed for the long term so that all Coloradans can enjoy it kind of indefinitely. So in addition to the shared resources that this project brings, we have Parks and Wildlife, Forest Service, and EBLT, but the Conservation Fund also left us with what they call the Stewardship and Equity Fund, a big fund to basically help support the transition of the project, but also help address some of the barriers that members of our community face to actually accessing this property. So we're working with a lot of our partners to make sure that there are opportunities for members of our community who couldn't otherwise get to this property to get there and enjoy it with everybody. So that's something we're working on. We're pretty excited about for the next season. So really what I want to stress with this project, this big, exciting, sometimes feels daunting project, is that we're really creating something new here. There are a lot of people, the conservation world is watching, and we know that if we do this right, this type of partnership is a promising new conservation tool that could be used with other vulnerable properties in Colorado, but also across the country. So there's no limit to the opportunity here. So we're really working hard to kind of do it right. So, which kind of brings me to my closing. Being a very small land trust in a big world of conservation with a lot of big organizations, what we've realized and learned from this project is that even a tiny land trust like ours can play a very important role in big projects like this. However niche our role is, we can, we have a lot of very specific benefits to being a small land trust. We're nimble, we're good partnership builders, we are good at leveraging funding. By supporting projects like this, we're able to create a lot of new opportunities like this, which is really exciting. So in most of all, this project has kind of helped our team open our minds a little bit to what is possible. if we continue to, continue to push the envelope of what conservation can do. So small land trust doing big things. We are just really excited to be part of it. And we have learned a ton. If this project is interesting to you at all, I definitely encourage you to check out our website, eblt.org/Sweetwater, sign up for our newsletter where we send out kind of pretty frequent updates. We've also got a survey that we keep on our website, eblt.org/Sweetwater, where we'd love for you to actually share your thoughts. What is your vision for conservation? We want to hear it. We're kind of in that phase right now, collecting as much community feedback as we can get, community and Colorado feedback, just so we can better cater the short and long-term plans to the needs of Coloradans today and kind of forever. So let us know what you think.
Great, thank you, Bergen. Beautiful photos. And take Bergen up on his offer to submit your input if you can. This is a resource for all Coloradans. So thank you again, Bergen. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah,
and did it stop sharing? Yes, it looks like it did. Great. So we are going to turn it over next to Maggie Hanna with Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust. And Maggie, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen, Maggie is going to present Beef, Books, and Better Soil, Benefits of Conservation Abound. I think I got all the B's in there. So Maggie, over to you.
Thank you, Linda, and keep it Colorado. My name is Maggie Hanna. I'm the Director of External Relations for the Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust. CCALT was founded in 1995 by the membership of the Colorado Cattlemen's Association to support delivering conservation outcomes and conservation solutions to Colorado's farm and ranch families. We have so many wonderful stories that it was hard to pick one, but when given the opportunity, I had to nominate this project. This is the Taylor Oswald Ranch, owned and managed by Steve and Nancy Oswald. I had the opportunity to manage this project. It closed in November of 2021, so it is a fairly recent conservation easement project for CCALT. The title of my presentation today was largely around trying to connect private lands conservation work happening around the state of Colorado to how we interact as consumers, as residents, as citizens of Colorado. So, Steve and Nancy Oswald. And hopefully I can progress these slides. Oh, good, okay. So I wanted to walk through what this agricultural operation is, what voluntary conservation is, and how CCALT played a role in delivering a conservation outcome for this generational ranch family. So, as many of you may know, I think there are quite a few people on this call who are quite intimately aware of agricultural operations around the state of Colorado. Thank you. But I think sometimes we forget to really appreciate the complexity of what is happening on these landscapes. We might be driving down the highway and see cattle or a tractor out in a pasture and think, oh gosh, what a nice life. Those farm and ranch families just drive around in a vehicle or check their cattle. But one of the things that was most impressive to me about the agricultural operation of Steve and Nancy Oswald is that they really, truly start from the bottom. Their primary objective in their agricultural operation is soil health. Soil is a key factor in healthy land and livestock. It is kind of our building block for making sure that we have functional businesses in the agricultural community. But I think in how it relates to us as a broader conversation, soil is the place that presents one of the most unique opportunities for creating climate resilience as we move forward. And so to interact with these landowners who are going above and beyond to create water efficiencies and improve soil health, they are doing cover cropping and introducing multiple species. They're doing multi-species grazing. And so they're they're operating in a way that starts with a primary objective of managing soil health, water quality and quantity, and then habitat conservation. In addition to soil, water, and habitat, this operation is a grass-fed beef operation. They are a direct-to-consumer program, so they sell a beef product directly to consumers. So that's all of us. And I think in this space, we are able to celebrate the fact that we can take the power of healthy soil and sun and turn that protein from the sun into a product that we can consume. And I think in addition to just a product that we can consume, beef offers a variety of other products to our lives, whether that is jet fuel or leather products. And then the other piece about this operation, they are a sustainable, profitable agricultural operation, and they make a concerted effort to manage the business in a way that is profitable. They don't want to pass on an agricultural operation that is in debt. They have 2 sons who are interested in being involved in the future of this agricultural operation. In addition, I think one of the coolest things about the way our agricultural communities function today is in partnerships, education, and science. I think sometimes we shortchange the fact that our ag producers are real deal scientists. This family in particular has extensive relationships with the Colorado State University Extension Office, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Natural Resource Conservation Services, and they do an immense amount of educating, whether that is Steve and Nancy as a partnership educating incoming new young agrarians or educating their neighbors and friends on improving agricultural practices, to the fact that Nancy was a 5th grade teacher for much of her career. She volunteers at the local history museum, and she is the author of a number of books featuring her donkey. In addition to their partnerships, they're doing extensive monitoring on the ranch. To back up a little bit, and I apologize for not painting this picture from the get-go. I hope everyone on this call has the opportunity to drive down Highway 50 through the Bighorn Sheep Canyon along the Arkansas River. This is a place that was important to my childhood. It is, has been a critical component of my career in the conservation space. And this project, though I don't have a map to share with you today, is really, really special because as you drive through the canyon, and there are the steep walls that come in around Highway 50, and you see the bighorn sheep coming down off the cliffs, you wonder, how on earth could those sheep be in there? What could possibly be on top of this canyon? And this operation connects the United States Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management acres of the high country directly to the Arkansas River. So this is a place where we could leverage private lands conservation to knit together an entire ecosystem and landscape that isn't all private lands. Some of these are public lands, and we can all see them and we can all enjoy them in some space. So I point out all these other components of this agricultural operation because I think it's really important to know and to celebrate that these agricultural producers are doing a lot of conservation on their own terms. This family approached the Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust with an interest of completing a perpetual conservation easement. I don't want to get into the weeds here, but I do want to share what a conservation easement is. It is a restriction on a deed of a piece of property that eliminates the potential for that property to be developed in the future. We do not take ownership of that property. That family owns, manages, and operates that ranch. It just will operate as one intact ecosystem into the future. This is a wonderful tool for families that seek it out and where it works. I think in this space, one of the things that the conservation easement presented to this family was the ability to plan. Knowing that this piece of property could exist into the future meant that they could build their operation around it. They could invest in this community in a different way, and they could bring home the next generation. So how and why does this matter to you? first and foremost, I think the easiest place is I hope for this, for all of you, that you have had at least one meal today. And I hope that you at least asked the question about where that was coming from. This is a family that is producing an agricultural product that is consumable. So they are intimately connected to our food system here in Colorado. I think one of the places where we should focus our attention, and I saw a few people mention this in the chat in their introductions, an ability to protect the food systems that are close to our communities is a very important aspect of planning for our future. In terms of community, this family has been actively engaged for many generations, whether they are teachers, church volunteers, fire department members. Steve makes a regular effort to be involved in the community in terms of the boards that he serves on and the people he allows access to the ranch to share in this educational process. Open space, I think for all of us, the last 2 years, we have sought out open space for solace and peace. It was how we recreated. And as many of you know, the Arkansas through the Bighorn Sheep Canyon is one of our primary recreation spots in Colorado, if you are a fly fisherman or a hiker or a biker. Wildlife habitat, as I mentioned, this property is really interesting in the fact that it connects the Arkansas Valley to the high country. And so allowing habitat, one intact landscape allows for migration corridors and habitat conservation. This family has done a lot of conservation around improving habitat for wildlife. Carbon sequestration, as I mentioned, one of the questions I think all of us are asking broadly as a society is how do we create climate resiliency moving into the future? And soil health is a place that really offers a lot of benefit. It offers a lot of benefit to all of us, even if we don't know all of the microbiomes that live in the soil. Water is one of Colorado's favorite hot topics. And I think making sure that we have a water table that is functional as it relates to the Arkansas River. The Arkansas River is an over-appropriated river in the first place, so making sure that we have a functional system that is putting water back into the river is critically important. I myself am an irrigator of the Arkansas. And then economic development. This operation supports many local businesses. They employ people in the region. They support our local economies, whether that is a local tractor supply or they use local processing facilities for their beef production. And then education. I think one of the questions we all ask ourselves, whether we are young and in school or not in school and a lifelong learner, where and from whom do we learn? And this is a family of educators on a variety of topics. This family was nominated for the Leopold Conservation Award in 2017. And in the words of Bill Gardner, an NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, district conservationists, this would be a better world if we all operated in the way that Steve and Nancy operate. They are excellent learners, innovators. They practice what they preach and they share their work and their lessons to all who are interested. So this was an exciting conservation project for CCLT. Like I mentioned earlier, we have many exciting stories. CCLT has conserved 705,000 acres of working lands around the state of Colorado. So this is just one to feature, and hopefully all of you take an opportunity to drive down Highway 50 and give the Oswalds a wave and maybe pick up some hamburger.
Great. Thank you, Maggie. That was awesome. I'm going to move us right along to Libby Collins next. Libby, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen. Libby is Trust, and she's going.
Are you there?
Yes.
Sorry.
Everybody froze on me for a second, but you're not frozen. You're good.
Okay. Great. Thanks. I sort of missed that introduction, so I'll just go ahead, Linda. Something was wrong there with the connection. That's fine.
Yep, it's a regular occurrence lately, so yeah. I apologize.
No, it's all part of it. Thank you so much for organizing this. This is just an amazing event for us all to participate in. My name is Libby Collins. I am a special projects manager with Colorado West Land Trust. I'm going to talk about today our work conserving land for the purpose of outdoor recreation, stewardship, and restoration. But before I do that, I just want to mention that Colorado West Land Trust has been around for 40 years. We celebrated our 40th anniversary last year. We're primarily, we work in private land conservation. So for 40 years, we've been working with ranchers and farmers to conserve over 126,000 acres across our 5-county region. But this project is a little bit different. About a decade ago, we had the opportunity to work to acquire land for public open space. I just want to talk a little bit about this particular area. This is the Monument Corridor outside of Grand Junction, Colorado. It's about 2 miles from the downtown Grand Junction. The Monument Corridor extends from downtown and the Colorado Riverfront all the way up to the Colorado National Monument, only about a 5-mile distance. But this area, this piece of roadway, this particular spot is critical for Mesa County and Grand Junction. It's the original vision for this corridor being so close to the downtown and neighborhoods was essentially one big long high density residential development. What we have here though along the corridor is 3 different public land agencies that are all connected. The Colorado National Monument, which is way up here at the top, is a National Park Service entity. The BLM, which has about 50 miles of public single track trails, public open space and single track trails, is also located just off to the left here. And what you're looking at right now is city land. So you have 3 public land management entities along this corridor, dotted with a lot of private undeveloped land slated for high density residential development. What the Land Trust did in partnership with the city of Grand Junction, as well as many other partners and funders, was to reimagine this corridor as something that instead of just a suburban residential development, but it would become an outdoor recreation mecca. Something that would really support the quality of life for local residents by providing open space close to home, but also acting as an amazing economic driver. So over this past decade, since 2012, the Land Trust has acquired over 230 acres along this corridor. It all started with this piece of property called the Three Sisters. Many of you may recognize this property. So 230 acres, that's not really a lot of land, right? However, understanding our model was to acquire this, to acquire some land. It started with the Three Sisters and conserve that land and then donate it to the, or deed it over to the city of Grand Junction for public open space. Realizing that the city of Grand Junction was not able to assume a lot of land that we acquired and handed over to them for management for public open space, and that we, the Land Trust, only had a limited ability to raise a lot of money to acquire a lot of public land. We had to be really strategic about the land that we did acquire and conserve. And so we did 3 different public visioning processes with our community, with the city of Grand Junction, with the community leaders, as well as with Great Outdoors Colorado, the Gates Family Foundation, and many other partners and local foundations to identify what makes the most sense along this corridor. How do we add value to, and how do we add public open space to this area, while at the same time allowing the area to develop somewhat, to develop some of their local suburban residential neighborhoods. And the goal was to maximize the economic impact and the public benefit for the community. So not only did we acquire this a total of 230 acres that provides a great view shed. It's the gateway to the Colorado National Monument, which is also an economic driver for the area, and provide additional public open space and different points of access for trails to these different public agencies. But it also, and I'll just go back, it provided, this 230 acres provided the ground for the alignment of this trail called the Monument Trail. This is a, right now, the vision for the trail is a 3-mile trail. We've completed 1.5 miles of that trail. It connects the Colorado Riverfront in downtown to the Lunch Loop Trailhead, which is on city and BLM land. The Lunch Loop Trailhead is the most popular trailhead in Mesa County. Like many places in Grand Junction, this area has seen a crazy increase in trail visitation. So we're in the process right now of planning and constructing the next phase, the next 1.5 miles of trail that will connect the Lunch Loop Trailhead up towards Colorado National Monument. But when we constructed this trail with the city, in partnership with the city of Grand Junction, we realized that there is an opportunity to address the fact that with all of these new people coming to use these trails, and there's a significant amount of degradation to the natural resource, there's an opportunity to create an outdoor classroom. What we did was, essentially the paved trail serves as a 1.5-mile linear outdoor classroom. Again, I'm going to reiterate that this is an area that's close to town, close to the university, close to schools in the Grand Valley, and is incredibly highly visible and very popular. So we thought we would have this opportunity where we could bring people and programming and other nonprofits to this monument corridor to do things, not just recreate, but to learn about the balance between stewardship and recreation, and also to participate in citizen science opportunities, which is what we have done with a lot of the local youth groups and adult volunteer groups as well. So in this corridor, we've been able to sort of create a nexus of recreation and stewardship and youth programming. You know, one of the things we have to realize, not everyone, not all these kids want to be, you know, mountain bikers. And the Lunch Loop area, it was at one point a very niche mountain bike area. But there's a lot of other opportunity in the corridor. And bringing kids from, for instance, the Riverside Educational Center to this area. Riverside Educational Center is an after-school tutoring program across the valley for underserved youth. They don't get to come to these public open spaces very often. We're able to connect with these kids now on a monthly basis and get them out there hiking, teaching them about recreating, but also just opening their eyes to the natural vegetation and giving them hands-on experiences with restoration. We partner right now with an organization called the Eureka Science Museum, geared towards K-12 science learning. They have expertise as well in restoration and native plants. just in 2021 through Eureka and their programming, their science camps, their combination of recreation and science camps. We have gotten kids to spend over 1,200 hours out in this area just for the 2021 season. Not only are they recreating, but they're blending their recreation experience with learning about the value of native vegetation and our native habitat. The other outdoor classroom aspect that we have been working on is developing a adult stewardship corps. They're called the Monument Stewards. We actually meet weekly. So this is a growing group of adults anywhere from 20 years old to retirement age. Particularly this group really grew and became much stronger during the pandemic when people were at home working remotely. We now have a group called Millennials Who Work From Home. That's what they've coined themselves as. Able to just take a couple of hours off every Wednesday morning to come out and do the restoration along the paved trail in the wake of that construction project. So we have planted since the beginning of this in 2020, since the beginning of this project, over 1,000 native plants right around the trailhead. If any of you have been to that Lunch Loop trailhead or witnessed the trail opening, you will realize that there was a lot of dirt there, a lot of destruction to the native vegetation, and a lot of potential for weed growth and invasives. So we've planted close to 1,000 natives. We've partnered with the city of Grand Junction. They deliver a cistern of water every week for the volunteers to irrigate these plants. This will be the first year where we will not have to do irrigation because the plants have taken on and are growing on their own. We worked with a local native plant expert to create seed meadows right around the shade shelter and in the trailhead area. We partnered with Audubon to transplant willow poles from the Audubon Preserve over to which runs along this paved trail. We worked with kids to go get biocrust from areas that were being scraped and developed into housing developments and transplanted that biocrust down along this paved trail. We've conducted Oya pot plantings. And the reason I mention all of these different types of activities that we're involved in with the volunteers and the kids is because there's tremendous amount of learning, partnering. Many of these volunteers come with advanced expertise. We have the university environmental sciences faculty participating, National Park Service staff volunteering, teaching new seeding methodologies, even new weeding methodologies. So we have lots of other local nonprofits participating, and there's a tremendous amount of sharing. What's now happening is we're not only sharing expertise, but the group has grown and sort of developed a name for itself. We're now sharing the volunteers themselves. So for instance, Rivers Edge West, another local conservation organization, as well as Colorado Canyons Association and the Audubon, and a number of others, we're all working together to how do we grow this adult stewardship corps to volunteer across the valley at all the various different events. Rivers Edge West announced that they are starting their own regular weekly volunteer session on at one of the nearby outdoor amenity areas on the river. And our stewards, our volunteers will also go over there and participate. So there's a tremendous amount of collaboration to grow this effort. It's pretty exciting, and it's just plain rewarding. This is a young woman, Hanna. She is a native plant expert. She is teaching this young man, Daniel, who actually is visiting. He participated in the SHIFT conference, which was held this year in Grand Junction. And we did a field trip out to this site. He's from Washington, D.C. He has worked for the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, and he took a lot of his skills and experience back to DC. We've kept in touch. He was really excited about, trying to replicate this effort that we've been that he engaged in. I'm going to point this out. This is a pretty unique, I think, group. The Monument Stewards is removing 1.5 miles of kochia. So when this trail went in, it's all on city land. The weeds took over. Kochia grew just incredibly quickly and fast and aggressively. You could not see the wash. This is no thoroughfare wash. It's the main drainage from Colorado National Monument down to the Colorado riverfront, and it was just completely covered in weeds. This crew cleared 1.5 miles of this kochia out, and in the process was allowing for the natives to reseed and expand. They're developing their own expertise. It saved the city of Grand Junction a tremendous amount of time, mowing, and herbicide, which is all the things that would have had to happen to knock this kochia back. So it's been a really fruitful partnership with working with those volunteers and the city of Grand Junction and all of the other organizations. And I have to say, one of the most fulfilling aspects of connecting people to this outdoor space. Again, originally our goal was to create more public open space and more trail access so that people from all abilities, ages, all backgrounds, various different neighborhoods could come to this lunch loop trailhead area, which is very close to so much, would be able to get there and recreate and get on the trails and experience the public open space. And what we didn't realize that we were going to do was create programming that would really expand the sense and the definition of access. It's not just about creating a place in a trailhead. Sometimes you have to work a little bit to get folks to get to the public open space, see the value in it, figure out how they're going to connect with nature. And the other thing that we're able to do is just address recreation and balance with stewardship and conservation. Well, we work with adults, but we're working with this next generation of stewards and conservationists, and that's pretty exciting. And they go out onto the land in a program, and they mountain bike, and they're riding all over, and they're enjoying themselves. And then they bring that energy back, and they do an hour of work, restoration, and becoming citizen scientists and taking ownership of the land that they're on. And so it's been a really valuable and great experience. And I'll just say one more thing. Another unexpected benefit of all of this has been the funders. The ability to bring so many more partners and visionaries to this Colorado, this monument corridor rather, to not only fund and support this type of programming, but to understand all of the different partnerships that can form and arise, and the ability to reach youth from underserved neighborhoods and adults from underserved neighborhoods, and just bring people into the fold of this public open space, which, previously was inaccessible for so many, and was slated for just high density residential development. So we at Colorado West Land Trust just feel really privileged and honored to be a part of this project. And yeah, thank you so much, Linda, for inviting me to talk about that.
Thank you so much, Libby. That was great information, and hopefully lots of things for people to think about in terms of how they can engage with this sort of work. So thank you so much. I'm going to pass it over to Regina Lopez White Skunk. Regina, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen. Regina's with Montezuma Land Conservancy, and she'll be presenting our relationship to the natural world. So I'll pass it over to you as soon as you're ready. And you're on mute, Regina. All right. There you go.
Okay. Technology, right? So good evening. My name is Regina Lopez White Skunk. I am of the Uinta and Weemanooch band. I'm a tribal member of the Ute Mountain Ute tribe. And I'm here with my organization, Montezuma Land Conservancy, which was founded in 1998, and we serve Montezuma, Dolores, and San Miguel counties. I'm currently the cross-cultural programs manager, and largely in part, my job is basically building the capacity between the tribal community of the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, but also to help us understand and begin to go down the route of engaging Indigenous tribes in general. So in our counties, we have the Ute as well as many Dene members who live in our communities. So we're trying to do our best to identify those opportunities to be able to engage them. So we are here today because of a collaboration between the Telluride Institute and Montezuma Land Conservancy, who's seen a wonderful opportunity to build capacity between the tribal communities and the world of conservation. One of the things that we realized we needed to do early on was to build relationships and to understand the inner workings of the tribal government that we would be looking to do the work with. We knew and understood that we needed to acquire the blessing of the Ute Mountain Ute tribal leaders, because it would help us to go down the route of doing the cross-generational projects and bringing that opportunity and knowledge to have the capacity to share. To do that, we would also engage them in the storytelling, because that's a huge, huge piece of what our culture is, but it's also an area that many of us can share, but we don't always realize that we have a story to tell. Through that, we acknowledge the natural world that we all live in, that we all share. So through those thoughts, we reached out and worked with the tribal leaders and established what we called a letter of intent with the tribal council. So we basically engaged the process of going before the council and presenting the conversation of not that we're there to provide a service directly to a program, but rather we're there to join in conversation, to understand and to become partners in our community to work for together. Learning a lot of the traditional cultural knowledges was really what we were reaching for. One of the first things that we did was on a very, very small scale of working within our own staff and the board. We engaged in being able to share some of the culture and activities with our board members and staff. And that really began to help us understand the direction that we were going to be going down. From that point, we also partnered and collaborated with various organizations like the Telluride Academy, and worked with our Fozzie's Farm programs. And I love to call it a classroom. It's the best classroom that if any of you ever have the chance to ever stop in and experience, Fozzie's Farm is really one of our hidden treasures in our neck of the woods. And that's something that has provided us opportunity to be able to engage other young people and collaborate with other organizations. Here you see the outdoor challenge participants of 2021 who came out and spent a week with us in our in our area there, and were able to experience the reservation and some of the operations that that we get to utilize in our farm and ranch operation. But we also have to understand where these farms and ranch operations are really indigenous, historical homes and territories where life happened. And these young people here are standing before the man who was born in that specific location there and was raised out in a community of people who were engaged in herding sheep and raising their livestock. And that's my father there. And the group of students along their way of experiencing the 2 weeks of activity starting out in the Telluride area in San Miguel County, made their way down into our area, visited the McPhee Dam, and was able to see what that canal system and how that played in much of the agricultural communities there, allowing for the water, and seeing how the tribes also are in partnership and how a lot of those decisions came to be. These students planted some trees out there near the little cabin, and which is also located near the farm and ranch headquarters, just right at the south end of the Ute Mountain. Here is a picture here of the staff during our board and staff retreat. And one of the best pictures we could take is anything with both the Mesa Verde and the Ute Mountain in the background. And that's pretty much the foreground of Fozzie's farm, which is one of the places that we cherish so much. It's led to great discussions and organizing gatherings. And one of the first things that we were very happy and really fortunate to happen during the pandemic was having the ability to engage tribal members, elders, and a tribal leader out in our space. And so and fortunately enough, we had a very nice day that day, but that took place in October of last year. That was our fall event, which really the whole point of that was really sharing stories and sharing a part of our culture with one another. It wasn't just the indigenous people sharing their stories. Each one of us had the opportunity to share a little bit about ourselves and stories that we remember. And that really helped to bring the whole group together in a very unique way. I felt very, very honored to be able to have been in the presence of all the participants there. It was one of the elders that were sharing, and it's really rewarding to see that our young people are unafraid to sit. And it doesn't matter, we include all young people as ours. In our culture, sharing a meal together is very, very important. And to be able to serve the elders and the community people that came out, it was a huge honor and a demonstration of respect, and also something that we can share in light of knowing that we're going to move into the future together, learning from one another. A young person sharing the gift of music and flute. His flute playing that day was pretty special because we don't often see young people sharing. And that was the beauty of a lot of what we brought and really wanted to make the centerpiece, was sharing through storytelling. Storytelling is also playing the music, because that's something that's coming from a very special place. Here is some of the environmental department, the Ute Mountain Ute Environmental Department partnering and sharing a great experience, which is they were transplanting willows that were coming from the Fozzie's farm property, and they were going to transplant them down in the Minkus Canyon area. The environmental department for the Ute Mountain Ute tribe has actively been engaged in trying to regenerate some areas that have been struck pretty hard because of the drought, as well as by some of the cattle and the other animals that may just be kind of wandering around there. But largely it's impacts of the drought that really have changed the landscape in a lot of the reservation areas. So working with the environmental department has really provided us a wonderful opportunity to do some of that intergenerational work. This is the little, that was near a river that only runs seasonal that they were trying to transplant. Here I had the wonderful opportunity of accompanying a group of students from the alternative high school, Southwestern Open Schools, who came out and also engaged in one of the meadows and replanting after the department and the Bureau of Indian Affairs came out and did some treatment on some of the invasive species that seem to be not needed and really not allowing for the natural and native plants to grow. Here we had a young person who was helping to teach the participants of the Southwest Open Schools to replant some native grass. This is the meadow that we're looking to do some replanting. Along with some of the native grass, previously they had planted some cottonwood so that rather than the unwanted species that were out there, we're hoping that this will bring back some of the native stuff. And also that someday down the road that the tribal members and community members would be able to look at this location and be able to utilize some of the plants, specifically the trees, in some of the cultural ceremonies. So this is a way, and it was beautiful that day because I heard a couple young people saying, oh, this is a great way for us to give back and help our Mother Earth. And that was exactly the whole point of why we do what we do, so that our young people will learn some basic guiding principles that will lead them to understand why our culture is the way it is and how it's important to also share, so that when we go through these tough and challenging moments, that they'll be able to share that experience with others. With all that being said, I'd like to just say thank you to you all, encourage you all to visit our website, Montezuma Land Conservancy, and also follow us on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regina, for sharing that. Okay, we appreciate everyone sticking through this. We're just running a couple minutes long. I appreciate you staying here, and I'm passing it over to Nicole Rosmarino. She's with Southern Plains Land Trust, and she is going to be talking about bringing back the American Serengeti. So I will hand it over to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you to Keep It Colorado for hosting this event. I've really enjoyed listening to the work of the 5 land trusts that preceded me, doing great work across the state. In the title to this presentation, I refer to the Great Plains, including the Southern Plains region where we work, as the American Serengeti. This is an imperfect analogy, but it's meant to communicate that our region is well worth preserving on the order of the African Serengeti. And I'm sure this doesn't apply to any of you, but many in our society think of the mid-continent prairies as flyover country, an area that you hurry through on your way to a more exciting destination. And this modern perception of the Great Plains stands in sharp contrast to early scientific observers. And Dan Flores makes this point In his book on the American Serengeti, he opens by quoting John James Audubon, who wrote a letter to his wife in 1843 describing bighorn sheep and grizzly bears, wolves, elk, bison, pronghorn, all in dazzling abundance on the grasslands. He stated that it is impossible to describe or even conceive the vast multitudes of these animals that exist even now and feed on these ocean-like prairies. He closed by writing, "My head is actually swimming with excitement and I cannot write anymore." This was John James Audubon. Of course, this reflection of natural abundance was not news to the many First Nations that had made a living on the prairie for millennia. But the tale that unfolded after Audubon's letter was a sorrowful one. The genocide of First Nations was accompanied by species after delightful species being pushed to the brink of extinction and even beyond. They string together bison, pronghorn, elk, grizzly bear, gray wolf, with the drivers of disappearance being market hunting and sometimes just a quest to tame the wilderness. We can't let the story end there. In the past 3 decades that I've worked on the prairie, I've learned that native animals and plants are amazingly resilient if we just give them the space to bounce back. The mission of the Southern Plains Land Trust, or SPLIT, is to create and protect a network of shortgrass prairie preserves, which ensure a future for all native animals and plants. Our geographic range includes all 5 states in the Southern Plains, but our land acquisition focus area is in southeastern Colorado. Essentially, we buy land and create wildlife refuges. We've protected 38,000 acres so far, 32,000 acres of which we own and manage ourselves. We plan to increase to about 60,000 acres this year. Our aim is to keep rapidly expanding our preserve network in order to protect these ancient grasslands against conversion to crops and energy development. Most land trusts focus on land protection, which is crucial. But we see this as just one of a 3-pronged effort to knit nature back together. We must also protect the wildlife and restore native ecosystems. Bison are one of our top conservation priorities. By returning bison to the prairie, we're helping to recover this ecologically powerful animal. Bison rip up yucca and juniper, thereby maintaining grasslands. Through their dust baths, these massive beasts create special wallow habitats. And bison also provide a mosaic on the grassland of more heavily and more lightly grazed areas. Protecting the prairie dog ecosystem is also a priority for us. Prairie dogs are important and imperiled. They create habitat through their vast underground network of burrows, which are valuable real estate on the shortgrass prairie. Those burrows provide thermoregulated dwellings for snakes, box turtles, and lizards. Escape zones, sorry, just a sec, there we go. Escape zones for ground squirrels and mice, and even a bird. The burrowing owl uses the burrows to nest and raise its young. Prairie dogs also clip and fertilize the vegetation, essentially gardening the prairie for the benefit of bison, pronghorn, and other grazers. A variety of predators, including the black-footed ferret, who's pictured under the prairie dog, the swift fox, who's pictured to the right of the prairie dog, badger, coyote, ferruginous hawk, which is bottom left, golden eagle, and bobcat benefit from prairie dogs as prey. Yet there has been, unfortunately, a war against prairie dogs with the result that only about 2% remain. But they enjoy total protection on split land. And as a result, we have just enrolled in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Black-Footed Ferret Reintroduction Program. The ferret is one of the most endangered mammals in North America, and we look forward to being a part of the effort to secure its future, as well as that of the entire utterly fascinating Disney-like prairie dog ecosystem. Grassland breeding birds are the most rapidly declining guild of birds in North America, having declined by over half since 1970. That's a loss of a staggering 720 million birds. Among those are the western meadowlark, pictured on the left, long-billed curlew on the top, and the horned lark on the bottom. And horned larks have lost more individuals than any other members of the grassland breeding bird guilds. They need all the help they can get, and bison grazing, prairie dog colonies, and the other restoration efforts we have underway at Split are providing some help. Prairie streams also need assistance, which we provide by protecting ancient cottonwood stands from livestock grazing, thus allowing the young cottonwood saplings to emerge and setting the stage for future cottonwood groves, which are oases of life in the prairie. We also work to revitalize prairie streams by welcoming and encouraging beaver, whose dams and canals are tremendously valuable for waterfowl, fish, and other wildlife. And I think of beaver in the streams and prairie dogs on the uplands as bookends of biodiversity in the shortgrass prairie. Elk belong on the prairie and occurred here in great abundance up until the early 1900s, at which point they were so heavily hunted that they literally fled to the forests. They're starting to come back to the grasslands, which is good news, and they're currently found in southeast Colorado, albeit in low numbers. To our delight, elk use our Heartland Ranch Nature Preserve and would benefit from even more land under our protection, given heavy hunting pressure beyond our borders. That said, we're working to expand benefits to wildlife outside of our borders by teaming up with our ranching neighbors to Heartland to modify 50 miles of fence in order to allow the elk to safely pass over and the pronghorn to safely pass under. We've restored a stone schoolhouse on our Raven's Nest Preserve as a nexus for our outreach efforts. And you can see the before and after here. We transformed a building that was in near ruins to a beautiful venue for educational efforts and also community events. And partners on this project included the State Historic Fund and our local historical society. Split also engages the next generation to appreciate native wildlife of the grasslands in our annual field trips that we've done since 2014. The teachers and students enjoy it immensely, and we love it when they catch prairie fever, which they invariably do. Our organization is firmly rooted in Southeast Colorado. Our staff lives near our preserves, and we routinely team up with local schools, area nonprofits, and our neighbors. The local economy has been flagging for decades due to its reliance almost solely on agriculture, and Split aims to help diversify that economy by attracting visitors, attracting grant funding, and sourcing our materials and labor locally whenever possible. And here on the left, you see a rehabilitated hawk being released by our neighbors. And on the right, those are teams that have been planting cottonwoods and willows along the streams. And I'll end with our Heartland Ranch Nature Preserve. At 25,000 acres, Heartland Ranch stands out as a showcase for landscape scale prairie preservation and ecological restoration in the Southern Great Plains. This preserve and the expansion area have incredible biodiversity. Habitats include grasslands, limestone breaks, prairie dog colonies, mesas, canyons, bottomlands, perennial springs, oases of cottonwood trees, and juniper woodlands. Flyover country? I think not. So what has Split's conservation work done for you lately? From big, beautiful bison to tarantulas to dainty wildflowers, the American Serengeti, prairie fever, and dazzling wildlife, these are things to get excited about. But most importantly, we have provided prairie creatures with the safe refuge they need to care for their families and their societies. And we aim to keep going. We're working to expand Heartland Ranch to 43,000 acres or nearly 70 square miles this year. And you can learn more about the effort and volunteer opportunities by visiting southernplains.org and joining in. Thanks for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicole. And I had the opportunity to actually visit those plains and see the bison and the tarantulas up close. And I highly recommend, if you get an opportunity to do that, I recommend getting in touch with Nicole. We have our 3 door prize winners. I guess, first of all, I want to thank all of our speakers, and I am apologizing on behalf of Regina, who had to ring off because she's in Bears Ears working on a project with Western Colorado University. So she wanted to thank you all for listening to her presentation. I thank all of our presenters and all of our folks who listened in this afternoon, and it's right after 6 here. So I am going to post, oh, Melissa already did it. Sarah Corliss, Kermit Shields, and Jane Wells are all the lucky recipients of a Keep It Colorado branded, there we go, baseball cap. So we will get in touch with you to get your ground mail addresses and send those away to you. And thank you everybody for coming. If you would like to learn more about any of the land trusts who presented today or any of the land trusts in our coalition, please visit keepitco.org. We have a section called Meet Your Local Land Trust. And I encourage you to take a look and see which land trust is serving your region. So thank you all again for coming, and go get dinner now.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.